There was a time when everyone envied Claire Bennett. She was married to Richard Blackwell, one of the wealthiest men in the country. Their mansion sat behind enormous iron gates. They had private drivers, luxury cars, expensive vacations, designer clothes, and everything money could buy. Whenever Claire appeared beside Richard at a charity gala, people whispered about how lucky she was. Some women wished they had her life. Some men wished they were her husband. Nobody knew that. Claire sometimes stood in front of the bathroom mirror at 3 in the morning, staring at her reflection and wondering when she had stopped recognizing herself. Because behind the mansion's gates, Claire wasn't a billionaire's wife. She was a prisoner, and Richard made sure she never forgot it. The first time Richard hit her, Claire didn't believe it had happened. They had been arguing in the kitchen. She had confronted him about his secretary, Vanessa. Again, Vanessa wasn't even discreet anymore. She answered Richard's phone. She traveled with him. She attended business dinners sitting beside him while Claire sat across the table. Everyone knew about the affair. Everyone except the woman who was supposed to pretend it didn't exist. That night, Claire finally asked the question she had been afraid to ask. "Do you love her?" Richard stared at her. Then he laughed. Not because the question was funny, because he couldn't believe she had dared to ask. "You really want to have this conversation? I deserve an answer." "You deserve?" He stepped closer. Claire instinctively stepped backward. "I am your wife." Richard's face hardened. "And you're forgetting your place." The slap came so quickly that Claire barely understood what had happened. Silence filled the room. Her cheek burned. Richard looked at her for a moment. Then he adjusted his cuff. "You made me angry." And he walked away. Claire stood there alone. She touched her cheek, and something inside her broke. Not because he had hit her, but because, somewhere deep inside, she knew it wasn't going to be the last time. The next morning, Richard acted as though nothing had happened. He left for work. He kissed Claire's forehead. He told her he would be late. Then he walked out. Claire remained standing at the door. She wanted to scream. She wanted to call someone. She wanted to leave. But where would she go? Richard had slowly made sure she had nowhere to go. Her accounts were controlled by him. Her friends had disappeared. Her family lived far away. He made sure she had no relationship with them, and her name was tied to his. But most importantly, there was the prenup. Claire remembered signing it 8 years earlier. Richard's lawyer had placed the document in front of her. Standard protection, he had said. Claire had trusted the man she loved. She signed. Richard had smiled. Now those pages had become a prison, because one sentence had become Richard's favorite threat. "You leave this marriage, Claire, and you leave with nothing." Nothing. He said the word often. So often that Claire began to believe it. The cheating became worse. Vanessa stopped hiding. One afternoon, Claire returned from a charity luncheon and found Vanessa sitting in the living room. Richard was beside her. Claire stopped. Vanessa smiled. Richard didn't even look embarrassed. "You're home early." Claire looked between them. "This is my home." Richard leaned back. "Then act like it." Vanessa stood. She walked past Claire without saying a word. Claire watched her leave. Then she looked at Richard. "How long has this been going on?" Richard shrugged. "Does it matter?" Claire's eyes filled with tears. "She's in our house." "Our house." Richard smiled coldly. "Everything you see here belongs to me." Claire looked around. The furniture, the paintings, the staircase, the enormous chandelier. For the first time, she understood what he was really saying. Even the life she had spent 8 years helping build was never hers. Months passed. The abuse continued. Sometimes it was a slap. Sometimes a shove. Sometimes it was simply his voice. "You're useless. Nobody would want you. You wouldn't survive without me. Who do you think will believe you?" And Claire began shrinking. She stopped speaking at dinner. Stopped laughing. Stopped seeing friends. Stopped looking in mirrors. She became careful. Careful with her words. Careful with her movements. Careful with her husband's mood. Until one evening, she caught herself apologizing to Richard for dropping a glass. He hadn't even been angry. She was simply afraid he might be. That frightened her more than the bruises ever had. Because she realized Richard didn't need to control the room anymore. He had learned to control her. Then came the night everything changed. Richard arrived home angry. Claire was sitting in the living room reading. He threw his keys onto the table. "Where were you today?" "At home." "Who came here?" "No one." He walked toward her. "Don't lie to me." "I'm not lying." He grabbed her arm. Claire pulled away. "You're hurting me." Richard's grip tightened. "You think you can talk back to me now?" Claire looked into his eyes. And something was different. For the first time, she wasn't afraid of what he might do. She was afraid of what would happen if she stayed. Richard shoved her. Claire stumbled backward and caught herself against the table. Silence. Richard looked at her. Then he said the words he had said 100 times. If you ever leave me, you'll have nothing. Claire looked at him, and slowly, she smiled. It wasn't a happy smile. It was the smile of someone who had finally understood something. Maybe. Richard frowned. What? Claire stood upright. Maybe I'll have nothing. She wiped her tears. But I'll still have myself. Richard stared at her. For once, he had no answer. That night, Claire went upstairs. She opened her closet. She looked at the hundreds of dresses, the jewelry, the handbags, the shoes, everything Richard had bought her. She took one suitcase and packed only what she needed. 3 dresses, a few pairs of shoes, important documents, her mother's photograph, and the small notebook she had kept hidden for years. Then she removed her wedding ring. She placed it on the dresser. She looked at herself in the mirror. For the first time in years, she didn't ask whether she looked beautiful. She asked herself something else. Are you ready? Her reflection seemed to answer. Yes. Claire walked downstairs before sunrise. Richard was sitting in the living room. He looked at the suitcase, then at her. Where are you going? Claire didn't answer immediately. You're leaving? Yes. He laughed. You'll be back. Claire shook her head. No. Richard stood. You know the prenup. I know. You'll get nothing. I know. You won't have the house. I know. The cars. No. Your credit cards? No. Your lifestyle? Claire looked around the mansion, then back at him. I don't want it anymore. Richard stared at her. You'll regret this. Claire walked toward the door. Richard's voice followed her. Claire. She stopped. He expected her to turn around. She did, but there was no fear in her eyes anymore. Keep the money, Richard. She looked at the wedding ring on the table. Keep the mansion. Her voice remained calm. Keep the cars. Then she opened the door. And keep Vanessa. Richard's expression changed. Claire stepped outside. I just don't want to keep losing myself. And she walked away. Claire's first apartment was so small that she could stand in the kitchen and touch the living room wall. The first night, she cried. Not because she missed Richard, because she was terrified. She had no driver, no housekeeper, no security, no billionaire's credit card, no guarantee that she would be okay. She looked around the tiny apartment and whispered, what have I done? The next morning, she woke up with the same fear. But she also woke up free. Starting over wasn't beautiful. It was hard. Claire applied for jobs. Some employers recognized her surname. Others recognized her only as Richard Blackwell's ex-wife. One interviewer looked at her resume and asked, You've been out of the workforce for 8 years. What have you actually done? Claire almost cried. Then she remembered the mansion, the charity events, the business dinners, the years of managing Richard's social obligations, the events she had organized, the designs she had created, the projects she had quietly helped with. And for the first time, she realized something. She had spent years believing she had done nothing. But she had skills. She simply hadn't been allowed to call them hers. So Claire started small. She took a job at a boutique interior design company. The salary was modest, but the first paycheck she earned had her name on it. She held it for several minutes. Then she cried. This time, they were happy tears. Years passed. Claire eventually opened her own design studio. It wasn't an overnight success. She failed. She lost clients. She made mistakes. There were months when she wondered whether she would make rent. But every morning, she woke up knowing that whatever happened belonged to her. The business grew. 1 client became 5. 5 became 20. And eventually, Claire's name became known. Not because she was Richard Blackwell's wife, but because she was Claire Bennett, a woman who had built something herself. 5 years after she left, Claire attended a charity gala. The same kind of gala where she once stood beside Richard and smiled for photographers. This time, she arrived alone. She wore a simple black dress. No billionaire's name beside hers. No expensive diamond ring. No need to prove anything. Then she heard a familiar voice. Claire. She turned. Richard stood behind her. Older. Less confident. Still wealthy. Still powerful. But somehow smaller. I heard about your company, he said. Congratulations. Thank you. He looked at her. You really did it. Claire smiled. I did. Richard hesitated. Come back. Claire's smile disappeared. Come back where? Home. She looked at him. Richard, that stopped being home a long time ago. He swallowed. I can give you everything again. Claire shook her head. You still don't understand. What? I didn't leave because I wanted less. She looked directly into his eyes. I left because I wanted to live. Richard said nothing. Claire turned to leave. Then he asked, "Don't you miss any of it?" She stopped. She thought about the mansion, the cars, the vacations, the jewelry, the life people once envied. Then she turned around. "I miss the woman I was before I met you." Richard lowered his eyes. Claire smiled gently. "But I don't miss the woman I became with you." And she walked away. Sometimes, leaving doesn't mean walking away with money. Sometimes, it means walking away with nothing but a suitcase and the courage to start again. And that can be terrifying. People may tell you that you're foolish. They may remind you of everything you're losing. They may ask why you would give up a comfortable life. But comfort is not the same thing as happiness. Money is not the same thing as security. And marriage is not supposed to cost you your dignity. Claire lost the mansion. She lost the luxury. She lost the billionaire's fortune. But she gained something Richard could never take from her again: her freedom. If someone has convinced you that you cannot survive without them, remember this: you survived before them. You can survive without them. And sometimes, the bravest thing you can do isn't staying and hoping someone changes. Sometimes it's choosing yourself and walking away.